So great. Thank you so much. Thanks to the Clean Fight for having us here, and it's great to have all of you here listening to our panel. Our panel is going to focus on the building envelope, but first, just by way of introduction, I'm Deborah Mullis from Handel Architects. I am a principal there, and our firm is about 120 people in New York. We have a company as well in Hong Kong, San Francisco, as well as Boston. And over the past 10 years, our firm has really been an industry leader in passive house design. Cornell Tech is really sort of something you're probably all familiar with. We're also working on the Sendero Verde project, which is 700 units of 100% affordable up in East Harlem. And we've been really working hard to integrate new technology into our projects. So NYSERDA didn't mention it. No one mentioned it yet, but we've got to get down to the detail, right? We've got to get these projects into these products into our projects. And a lot of it starts really with the relationships between the architects and the products themselves. So super important that if you're pushing a product, you get to the architects, because we feel like we're the ones that are really drawing your product into and specifying your products. So we're here today to look at 3 really interesting products that help to improve our building envelope. And the building envelope, as we know, first line of defense, right? We have to have a robust, airtight envelope that will then drastically reduce the heating load in the interior of the building, right? We want to get to the heating load, the cooling load too, but let's get to the heating load. Reduce that heating load so we can reduce the mechanical system, so we can reduce the amount of energy needed to run the building, right? So that's the goal, is to reduce the load by making a great envelope. Right, so we're here to dive in to learn about 3 really interesting and relevant solutions, and then also to hear from some owners and operators and how they are incorporating some of these solutions into their envelopes. So we're going to start with Tom. Tom is, by a brief introduction.
A vice president of engineering at Beam Living, which we have roughly 16,000 apartments in Manhattan and Queens. So I oversee a lot of the sustainability efforts we do on property. Stuytown has the largest rooftop solar array in the city with 3.8 meg. So we're trying to continue that with our other projects in and around the buildings.
Well, that's great. And so having 16,000 units in your portfolio, how do you think the role of the envelope, of a tiny little envelope solution or any sort of envelope solution, can help you in your overall goal of saving energy?
I think you have to think about the envelope in this environment and the cost of energy now, and you know, in a drive to be more sustainable and reduce the carbon footprint in and around the city. You know, and all the cladding and envelope materials have, you know, been improving over the years. Window technology has improved immensely. You know, we continuously look at that for window replacement projects and stuff like that that we're doing. And, you know, there are some interim solutions as well that we'll talk about. But as far as the cladding goes, I mean, you know, we're moving beyond the EFIS, which was, you know, used for many years and still used in a lot of cases, where, you know, panelized cladding is becoming more prevalent. You can get cladding in anything you want now: glass, brick, stone, you know, and it's energy efficient. And some of the more innovators in the market now are looking at, you know, how can we push MEP into the cladding, you know, especially for the older buildings whose infrastructure is growing old. You know, some of my stuff is, you know, just post-World War II, and, you know, the infrastructure is, you know, in the 70 some odd years old. So you need to look at how you're going to attack that in the future. And if you can actually build your infrastructure on the outside of the buildings and, you know, worry about connection points on the outside, you're doing a lot of things, right? You're minimizing the effect on your residents. You're minimizing your cost, right? Because you're keeping your buildings full of residents. You know, if you talk to any leasing agent, you know, retention is huge, right? So, you know, the more you keep, the less you spend. So we continuously look at that, and we're looking at that now for some of the, for future projects. Being the buildings are older, you say the facade's the first line of attack, but it's really, for the older buildings, we concentrate on the mechanicals first and then go to the outside, right? That's because as you're doing that mechanical work, you're thinking, what's my next line of defense here for becoming carbon neutral? And, we continuously look at that, and we're working with some of the more innovative, cladding companies that are out there to see what's next and see what we can do. And, it's an expensive undertaking, but, there are huge benefits to it, so.
Right, so you mentioned window retrofitting, that is really terribly, it's not only challenging to the inhabitants, but it's very costly. And so we have Sam here from Indo. Could you introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name is Sam Pardue. I'm the CEO and founder of Indow. What we make are window inserts that press on the inside of existing window frames without a mounting bracket, with no change to the primary glazing. So we're a secondary glazing solution. The reason why we're so important, we think, is that retrofitting replacing windows is almost always cost prohibitive in terms of an actual return on investment. DOE recognizes that windows are critically important. There's, Deborah mentioned heat pumps, right? DOE recently completed a survey of 400 top energy efficiency technologies, and they identified secondary glazing as the third most promising technology for reducing carbon emissions. But we can't just replace all those windows, it's too expensive. So secondary glazing approaches, you don't have to. We've developed a kind of, out of the clean fight, we've been inspired to develop a whole product line which now comprises the highest performing secondary glazing products in the world. We can retrofit existing windows with vacuum insulated glazing units while leaving the original glazing intact, right, for the super high performance. We can also do very, very friendly, for easy to operate for the tenants. We've developed a stackable system so you can remove the bottom unit and hang it right in the same window frame to solve this storage problem. We looked at Beam's, vast number of windows, and they're going to replace all their windows. They already have a budgetary plan for that, so we're maybe not a great fit. But we're a fantastic soundproofing solution. So we're looking at possibly, retrofitting some of the units and to block noise, because our product blocks the drafts 100%, so great for a low-cost passive house type of solution. It also blocks up to 70% of the noise coming through the windows. Fantastic for New York City, getting a good night's sleep. And a couple, studies have shown 20% reductions in heating and cooling energy use once you install our very simple solution. So we think the whole window industry kind of needs to be turned on its head, and instead of thinking about replacement, thinking about ways to really upgrade existing windows at the least possible cost. And that's what Indow is really pioneering. The window industry is characterized by enormous transaction costs. It's very disruptive to do the work, not only very expensive, but it's very disruptive to tenants. It takes 5 minutes to measure a window for an Indow installation, 10 minutes to do the installation, and you have an incredible range of performance benefits. So we think there's a huge opportunity for us to contribute, but also not just by developing all the technology ourselves, but by partnering with the most brilliant window technology solutions out there, because we can be the delivery vehicle that makes it most efficient to get really advanced glazing solutions into existing windows. That's kind of our story.
Great. It's a really interesting product. And Mick, maybe you could just talk about how potentially this type of product could work for your developments.
So,
and introduce yourself.
So my name is Mike Gilbert. I'm the Director of Energy and Sustainability at Fairstead. So I just had to get an updated cheat sheet from our marketing people. We are growing very rapidly. We have about $6 billion worth of assets. We're in 18 states, and we also have about 16,500 units, I'd say somewhere north of 200, 250 individual buildings. So we're about, I'd say, 80% affordable and 20% market rate at this time. And what's been interesting about the affordable end of the business is, our forte is really in-unit rehab and in-unit renovation, which, as Sam alluded to, is a much bigger deal from a disruption perspective than I would have imagined prior to taking this job. The other aspect is quite often we're doing 100% rehab, all units, and then we're working outside. We have the luxury sometimes of working outside in, which is first attacking the building envelope and then hopefully right-sizing the mechanicals. And one of the things we've instituted since we've kind of gotten in this game is to force that right-sizing exercise in new load calcs, envision post what the rehab would be, which is not normally what we would get going status quo. So the attractive of the utility of inserts, is that what you?
Sure. If you could comment on it, have you researched it?
Yeah. So we researched this. I think what's been interesting here is kind of the 80-20 rule. Can we get most of the benefit with just a fraction of the cost? As everyone's alluded to, windows are both expensive and disruptive. For us, particularly on the affordable side, it's either going to be driven by code, right? We must upgrade the windows or the envelope, or it's going to be driven by a return on investment in the savings, and that's usually what we're evaluating. On the market rate is, what's been interesting is seeing both perspectives here. The market rate can have some aesthetics, particularly noise attenuation and aspects like that take a bigger role. But by far the biggest opportunity is where we're renovating 100% of the units, touching the mechanicals, can start to get those cumulative benefits by adding insulation around the building envelope itself.
Right, and so that gut rehab is a great opportunity for someone like Aeroseal to come in. So when it comes to a full gut rehab, how does the product Aeroseal help to tighten up a leaky facade?
Yeah, so we really work best with our aero barrier product in the building envelope space. So what we've done is basically revolutionized how you seal up a leaky building. We pressurize the space and send in an aerosol sealant throughout, and it finds those holes and gaps and starts to solidify and really seals up that envelope. So it is a great solution for being able to, we monitor it the entire time with a blower door. So you would know exactly what you're getting. If you're trying to reach a certain air change per hour or any kind of goal like that, we know immediately when that's happened with our system and can provide the report out to show that. This helps the building occupants in a lot of ways, right? So the number one thing that happens when you have too much air infiltrating your building is moisture comes in. And so you can only imagine the detriment, I'm sure you guys know, of what happens when you have too much moisture coming into your building. We also help, though, with reducing the amount of allergens, any kind of odors, all of that is stopped when you have a tight envelope. So you have happier occupants. They're not smelling what the person upstairs is cooking for dinner anymore. They're not having, any of those gases coming in from the outside, from the cars, things like that. So it just makes an entirely better system, but happier occupants as well.
Right, and Tom, yes. Have you tried the Aeroseal product in your?
I have. Yeah, I've worked with Aeroseal on not so much the aero barrier. I think that came after we were doing ductwork sealing. The ductwork in the building is, it's your last line, right, of your equipment, right? So it's a very important piece of your equipment, and with bad ductwork, it's like putting old tires on a new car, right? So.
So
the way it's
diverge for a moment, but it is great for ductwork. As we actually specify in new construction, it's sort of our base spec in our office for all new construction, not only rehabs, but new construction.
Yeah, it increases the efficiency of your equipment, both ends, and you spend all of this money on high efficiency, AC units and boilers, and you're not paying attention to the end product, right? That's distributing the air, right? So it helps you in your balancing the buildings and stuff like that.
It must be really interesting for a gut rehab. It must make a huge difference. So that's really exciting. So thank you for bringing that product to us. Okay, last we have Wanda from Clean Fiber. And Clean Fiber is a type of insulation material that you should tell us about.
Sure. So I'm actually representing Clean Fiber today. I'm a partner at the Clean Energy Venture Group, which has invested in Clean Fiber, but the CEO was not able to be here today, so I've stepped in. Can you hear me better? Yeah, thank you. Just to repeat that, I'm a partner with Clean Energy Venture Group and representing Clean Fiber, which is one of the companies that we've invested in. And the company, as opposed to standard insulation, has benefits both, I would say, economic, health, safety, and carbon. And I do a lot of work on my own on carbon, and for our venture group on carbon accounting and looking at what are real quantifiable carbon savings, because there's a lot that's out there that doesn't necessarily give you the returns in that arena that you want. So Clean Fiber is an insulation that's made, it's a clean, green, carbon negative insulation that's made out of recycled cardboard. And if any of you have ever ordered from Amazon, I don't think there's a single person here that would say they haven't multiple times. What do you do with all those cardboard boxes? And it's made into a very efficient carbon negative embodied carbon insulation. And compared to other forms of insulation, fiberglass is the dominant one. Fiberglass has real issues in terms of safety and health. It could be a carcinogen, it can be dusty, as opposed to Clean Fiber, which is really clean and healthier. It's also higher efficiency. Cellulose insulation in general is higher efficiency, so for building owners, it's in the range of about 30% in terms of R value and thermal efficiency, so you use a lot less energy. And for foam has VOCs, off-gassing, which is problematic. Clean Fiber also has a much better safety in terms of fire safety profile as well. And on the carbon side, which is a very key, it's embedding carbon in the building, which all cellulose does, but as opposed to conventional cellulose, which is made out of paper, a recycled paper. I mean, who reads papers these days? I mean, I can't even remember the last time I picked up a paper. That supply is going down, the cost is going up. It's also dusty and contaminated often. Well, we get a very good supply from all these recycled cardboard. So, in summary, we'd like to see this ubiquitous. Cellulose insulation is adapting very fast in Europe. It's about 50% of the homes in Finland. Our first plant is located in Buffalo, and it's creating very good manufacturing jobs, which is another plus for the state. So the bottom line is it's economically beneficial, health and safety, and in carbon embedding. It also keeps all that those boxes, because I always wonder what the hell happens to these boxes, keeps it out of the landfill. And in landfill, cardboard decomposing creates methane, and methane is about 80 times worse as a greenhouse gas on climate change than carbon, especially in the short term. So anything that can reduce that, in addition to it being beneficial for the buildings, is a really plus.
That's great. No, we want that product to be developed to be used on the exterior of facades, in that cavity. So that's your company's next challenge. You got to tell the company there, because right now for new construction and for cavity wall, we are able to use mineral wool as a sort of, that to us is the next best thing for exterior insulation, right? So we've been able to get that insulation into our spec as well. And so even in our brick cavity walls, even with the most basic owners, they're letting us use mineral wool as opposed to XPS or EPS, right? So just get it in there, get your cavity an inch bigger. We can do it. We can get that angle a little bit longer, and we can get that insulation in your cavity. No reason why not. And hopefully someday we'll be able to use the Clean Fiber product in that application as well, or other insulation products out there. So I think that's just really, really exciting. Well, that is the end of our questions, our pre-prepared questions. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes.
I mean, we're working with NYSERDA to try and help them push the narrative, right? And come up with these ideas. And the incentives, I think, are helping. I think they're helping us helping the projects get kicked off the ground and making people think a little bit about how to better decarbonize.
I'll put in my 2 cents. I think you should, NYSERDA should look for ways to decouple the decarbonization funds from the system's benefit charge. And the reason is, so we won one of the NYCHA Pact RFPs. It's a huge decarbonization opportunity. All right, very, very inefficient buildings, steam heat, gas, in some cases oil. But because they don't pay the system's benefit charge because they're locked into night pub power, they're not able to tap into the traditional NYSERDA or Con Ed programs. Only the Nat Grid programs on the gas side. But opportunities like that where you're really undertaking something very large that can have a very, very big impact on decarbonization. So that would be my suggestion.
I have a suggestion on this because I've seen this from a variety of angles and also from the Department of Energy. So the Department of Energy loan program, they've made some, it's now headed up by Jigar Shah, who sort of pioneered the solar PPA and a very, in investing in clean tech. He's brought in people from the business sector that understand the need for sort of the nimbleness and a different approach that small businesses in particular have, that they don't have the type of resources often that larger buildings that engage with large public larger entities that engage with larger public entities like NYSERDA. So I think looking at that model could be really helpful to get some of the business processes just a little bit easier to navigate.
Okay, are there any other questions? Someone else had a hand up over there. No? Sure. Yeah. We'll have time for both.
I was just curious, from an operations perspective, you set your technologies in place to install them. What are some of the operational considerations that you're looking at?
Yeah, so the benefit of our technology is we do it one time and you're done. So it lasts for over 30 years. So it's nothing that you have to maintain or keep up with. It's basically you do it one time, whether you're doing the ducts or the envelope, you do it once and you're good for the life of the building.
You clean the windows just pretty much the same way you would clean existing windows in our case. So, I mean, it's kind of similar, but.
Ditto.
Back there.
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on this, but I've seen videos with clean fiber insulation versus fiberglass, and the fiberglass just goes up like this. Well, you can actually hold it in your hand and put a torch to it. So it's not fireproof in that it will. Nothing is 100% fireproof, but it's much higher fire resistance. Yeah, well, I can't talk to the chemistry. That's proprietary. But one thing that it does do is that it doesn't settle in leaving large gaps where things can get in. It really fills up the cavity, so that helps in all the factors that you've mentioned.
Right, it's a blown-in product, so it really does get all
Yep, exactly.
Cool. All right, well, I've been told that that's it. So you're going to have to come and ask individually the product reps, and I have some other folks, Louis and Mikhail from my office, if you have some questions for us from Handel.
And I also want to just give a thanks to NYSERDA. NYSERDA has been very helpful to clean fiber and also just really extending a lot of support to smaller companies that are part of the solution. So.
Great, and thanks to the
Yay, NYSERDA.